Jesus. Hi everyone, welcome to the Yisan Al-Gaib, or as I like to call it, Yisan and the Falling Leaf. This is my CEDH deck check I would like to do after getting first place out of Swiss out of the CCS 10K in Georgia this weekend. I was not expecting in the slightest to win a single game with Yisan. My wife bought me a ticket as my in-laws were coming into town and let me go out and play on the weekend. I only get to go do a tournament maybe once every 4 to 6 months because I do work on Sundays at my church. So it's very rare that I get to go to these. I was really excited, and I have been talking about bringing Yisan to a tournament for so long. My record on topdeck.gg, as you can tell before this video was posted, was 0-8. I have never won at the top deck event because I don't get to go often. I don't get to practice. And so Yisan was my Hail Mary. It's my pet deck. I am obsessed with the deck and I love it, but I just know it's not competitively viable, or at least I thought. Let's get into that in this video. So I did include a lot of MH3 cards that are new, or not a lot, but as many as made sense for the deck. One inclusion won me a game, one inclusion lost me a game, and I want to get into the nitty gritty about that. So I got 22 points, 4 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. Both draws were intentional by the other 3 people, and I knew if I didn't say draw, I would get targeted. And the other 4 wins were fought extremely hard for. And I want to get into the inclusions and exclusions that made that happen, as well as a lot of controversy around the way I politic with this deck that I think is extremely unique to Yisan. So let's go ahead and get into the deck list real quick, and then we'll get into what happened during this tournament that made it so uncomfortable for a lot of people to play against me, how gaslit people felt like by the politics that Yisan has to do. That's definitely something that CEDH can try to do, but really it's only Yisan that's able to do this. But yeah, Yisan Yappers Anonymous, or I was out in full force, and almost won top 16, and it was one deck exclusion that lost me that I want to talk about. One card exclusion. So, Yisan the Wanderer Bard, I'm sure you guys are familiar as long as you've played CEDH long enough, but a lot of you I bet have never even seen it. Tap, so it's 2 colors into green, tap, and you go get a verse counter on him and search your library for creature CMC, exactly the amount of verse counters. You are allowed to untap him rapidly with untappers and go get 2 permanents, creatures, the CMC that are the same. So if you tap twice, he'll now have 2 verse counters on him, and you get 2 CMC creatures. That's a part of some of the combos. I don't personally use that very often, but it is something a lot of people do as a toolbox method. So first and foremost, Allosaurus Shepherd. This won me exactly 1 game by pumping all my elves. This is an extreme backup plan. I only use it in the worst case scenarios where the game is stacked out, opposition agents, lots of Orcish Bowmasters. Arbor Elf obviously include because of Ashaya. It allows it to untap itself. Unlimited untaps. And there's a lot of ways to break that and break parity. Pretty obvious inclusion for Yisan. Birds is a mana dork. Nothing really fancy here. Cankerbloom allows me to do verse counter 2, but what I like to do with this, I bring it out and I act like it's a threat to make sure it stops Underworld Breach, and then when I'm ready, I use it to proliferate the counters on Yisan and go get a higher verse counter creature that would win me the game. Often I'll skip 1 to 3, and I'll go get Doze in the Falling Leaf to lock my opponents out. Circle of Dream Druid, I am actually cutting this from my deck as a result of this tournament. I didn't see it once or want it a single time, as it's one toughness on a 3-mana creature, and that's a lot in a Bowmaster meta, and I never needed the card. I have it fully altered, it's gorgeous, and it's going to be living on my shelf. Same with Seaborn Muse that I cut. Collector Oof, I don't even have to say anything. I locked out my finals pod to restart in top 16 with this card. It allowed me to get an ID and go for it again the next game. Obvious inclusion. Delighted Halfling, I didn't see it all weekend. I didn't need it all weekend. It might be a card to cut, but at the same time, I think it's stupid to cut it because it makes an uncounterable Dozen. Fantastic card. Destiny Spinner won me a game. I was able to put down a creature uncounterable and then also make one of my creature lands haste with it. That's actually the largest part of this. Ashaya makes my creatures lands. Then I'm able to start tapping them for mana due to the fact it's given them haste through Destiny Spinner. It's a large part of Yisan. I personally only had to use it once, and it was kind of egregious. I didn't need to. So, Disciple of Freyalise, new MH3 card. Why do we like it? Why is it good? The biggest thing is obvious. It's a land and a creature. That's awesome. But the biggest thing is it's 6 CMC, and it's a new verse counter inclusion, normally where we'd only have Kogla or Woodland Bellower. Super awesome. I won a game with this due to the fact that there was a perplexing Chimera on the board, and I realized I needed to draw through my deck and not just creatures. That way I could use spells to interact and let the Perplexing Chimera player take the spell. So what I did was I used Disciple of Freyles to sack my Yisan and continually replay Yisan, because they knew if they tried to take it, and like my game plan's still going. At that point, I can start sacking. So I knew that they wouldn't take it with the Perplexing Chimera. I was able to draw through my deck and get the win. Really awesome card. And I was using a flicker method to do so. Doze in the Falling Leaf. This is the controversial card, and this is what almost had a judge call me due to an arguments at table. And we'll go over that soon, but I just want to go through the deck list first. Dustwatch Recruiter almost won me my top 16. I was drawing through my whole deck using it. I had over 38 mana represented every turn because of a lockout we had against the Kenrith, Thrasios, Vial Smasher, Malcolm Vial Smasher game, in which we were all stopping each other from winning in a circle with Oppos and lots of Bowmasters and things like that. Elvish Mystic, obvious mana dork. Elvish Spirit Guide gets turn 1 Yisan out a lot. It's really helpful, so I can go Soul Ring, Elvish Spirit Guide, win. Or not win, but it feels like a win. Endurance, the Endurance player never wins. I never cast Endurance the whole time. It's an extreme backup, but in my opinion, extremely obvious include in any green list that's only mono green. Outside of that, I don't play Endurance. If I'm not mono green, Endurance is a silly card in my opinion. Unless you're Ian, apparently. Shout out. He did win with it once. Eternal Witness, obvious inclusion, allows me to get all my creatures back. And the biggest thing is I get it off of Woodland Bellower, which allows me to go return creatures that normally I wouldn't be able to later on, because Woodland Bellower puts her immediately onto the battlefield. Amazing card. Spice Tech, Fanatic of Ronus, won me 3 of my games. There's a huge new line with it I can't wait to get into. But obvious, super awesome card. Really easy to activate in Yisan, just all-star of the deck. Finhorn Elves, obvious inclusion. This is what turns on my Fanatic of Ronus. I get it on Verse Counter 3 after Verse Counter 2 from Fanatic of Ronus, which turns it on because it buffing Yisan, allowing me to then go for a line. Also, it having Flash is obscenely like important. Someone snapped it back to my hand, attempted to bolt Yisan, and then I flashed it back in, and that's how I won my round 1. We'll get more into that. I felt amazing. I felt like on top of the world. Hope Tender, obvious inclusion, just double taps your guy's Cradle, and if she's a land, she untaps herself when you exert. Easy. Hyrax Tower Scout, normally you would have this with Kogla. I should have had Kogla on this list. It costed me the top 16 win. I'll go into that more, but normally really good. Llanowar, really easy. Magus, same thing as Hope Tender. Manglehorn, obvious shutdown Dockside, and the most important political card in the entire deck, and we'll get into how that got me in some heat emotionally with some other players. Priest of Titania, obvious inclusion. Quirion Ranger, the glue that holds the deck together. It's always your Verse Counter 1 unless you need protection, allowing you to flicker. In my deck, because I'm aggressive, I'm trying to win turn 3 or turn 4, and I don't get protection of my first verse almost always, unless I'm against people that know me. If people know who I am, I have to get protection. Reclamation Sage, extra interaction. Soccer Tribe Scout nearly won me top 16 by allowing me to do a lot of land extra shenanigans on other people's turns. Really great card. Script Ranger, it's Quirion but better, except you have to have more mana to loop with it, but normally that's not the problem. Sylvan Safekeeper, obvious turn 1, Verse Counter 1, help keep my stuff alive. Teamer Sabertooth, if you don't know this card, I don't know why you're playing CDH at this point. Walking Ballista is my personal choice to make lines easy. It's what I do to make games non-complicated and come down. And not only that, I had a game where I manually tapped out for over 70 mana to kill the table with it. It happens. I used it, killed 2 players, went to the player I knew who couldn't win, E-Wit, put it back in my hand, recast next turn. It has way more potential than just being a finisher. It has potential to be a nice mid-range. I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, I can sweep the board with it. To kill opposition agents was the biggest thing too. Wirewood Symbiote, return an elf you control to your hand. It helps you rebounce Quirion Ranger and go off. And this card is way more busted than people know. Woodland Bellower, my favorite card personally in the deck right now. It was the reason I won 2 of my games. We'll get into that. Yeva to give everything flash. The rest of this is really obvious. We got Finales, Green Suns, Nylea's Intervention, and Sylvan Safekeeper. But what you aren't seeing, obviously, is a lot of cards that are a lot more tutors. I think this deck should only ever tutor to Battlefield, me, personally. I don't think there is a reason you should ever try and put to hand and cast. I don't like Worldly Tutor. I don't like Sylvan Tutor. It makes things more complicated real quick, and it gets the spell count up for Mindbreak Trap when I already have uncounterable green spells. And that's what's important. My green spells with Allosaurus Shepherd being uncounterable, I don't want to get Mindbreak Trapped. And that's what should be scariest. My opponents in top 16 held up 2 Mindbreak Traps for me because they knew it was the only way to stop me, and they held up 4 mana. It makes the game really heated. I did not run enough fight spells, and I did not run enough bite spells in this deck to make it out of top 16. But my low amount of fight spells is what made me win in Swiss, because I had gas. So Ancient Animus, obvious include. I'm taking it out soon, but it used to be a very obvious include for a fight spell. Autumn's Veil, again, kept me alive mini game. Beast Within, top decked it, killed an Oppo, 2 games, won me my games. Benefactor's Drought is one a lot of people don't use that they should be. You can either use it to go off and untap your creatures, get a lot of mana. You do also draw a card after casting it, which is extremely relevant. And also, I have swung in for lethal with all my elves before and drawn a bunch of cards due to it. And it drew me into Court of Calling, which won me a game. So, Court of Calling, obvious inclusion, straight to Battlefield, easy to use. Crop Rotation, grabs you guys. Cradle. Force of Vigor, I can't tell you how many times I casted Force of Vigor. I think it was every other game, at least. I just slamming that thing. Stopped a lot of breaches, stopped a lot of... I stopped a turn 1 Atali, or turn 2 Atali, and a couple other really, really messy games that could have happened without it. Legolas's Quick Reflexes, I never had to cast it. It always ended up being extra protection. It's an obvious include for sure, especially because you can untap, tap, win the game by clearing the board with it and then swinging out. Really cool. Nature's Claim, obvious inclusion, ram through. There are some loops with this. I will be taking it out after this. It was just unnecessary. Summoner's Pact, I am on a Summoner's Pact game plan because I often am going for it turn 3, and if I need to skip first counter 4, I go get, funny enough, the most Summoner's Pact card in the entire deck is the Canker Bloom, so I can skip first counter 4 for cheaper and not have to pay 6 mana, and I go get a Shia before having to use my untap with Korean Ranger because it's only once per turn. Extremely relevant. So funny enough, that is what I get the most time. Tail Swipe, super easy, +1/+1, attack during my main phase to get rid of Oppos. Tamio Safekeeping, I might cut it. Really wasn't that relevant. I used it once just to trigger another person's Ristic Study to try to fight us out of a loss. We lost that game. My only loss during Swiss. And then Veil of Summer, obvious. And then Vitalize, another untap all creatures, lets you go for it easier if you don't have the mana for it. Chalice of the Void locked out one of my top 16 games and led us to an intentional, or almost led us to an intentional draw. Really good card in my opinion, especially in Seat 1. And just to be clear, during this tournament, I played Seat 1 twice and Seat 4 3 times. I won from Seat 4 all 3 times and then once in Seat 1. It was... the Seat 1 Chalice was always the bomb. It was incredible. It stopped so many decks from winning turn 2. A lot of the Malcolm, Glinthorn type style stuff that would have come down. Obvious mana package, only the mana positive rocks. That's all I want. A lot of people talk to me about running Thorn of Amethyst. And it's something I should try. I think it's actually going to replace Concordant Crossroads next, as Concordant Crossroads was completely irrelevant. I never saw it. I never needed it. I never wanted it. And it was also the most telegraphed I'm trying to win anyway. And if you're already telegraphing that hard, they're going to counter it. You might as well just win with Dozden on the field. It's not a good card. Burgeoning almost won me finals. It was in my game that I intentionally drew. We'll get into that. Or semifinals. Exploration, again, all-star, double land drops. Chef's kiss if you're on as many lands as I am, which we'll get into. Kenneth's Transformation saved me 2 games from losing to it. Someone that was constantly using 6, which was really good. And then Wild Growth, obvious. So I'm on 33 lands with the MDFC. So Ancient Tomb, I almost took it out, but Ancient Tomb Lotus Petal, Ancient Tomb Spirit Guide did get me Yisan out one time. It's worth it. Turn 1 Yisan is just so huge if you could do it. Beseiju, obvious. Garenbrig, obvious. Extra activations for mana. So if I'm on 5 mana and I need 6, this has saved me so many games. Cavern, always name human. You want it for Dozen. Human. You can easily make your elves uncounterable anyway. Desert Temple, hate it. It's only ever lost me games. It's never won me games. If I have a Gaia's Cradle, I'm normally fine taking it out. Not worth it. 23 Forests. I need a lot of forests in this deck because you have to return a forest to your hand in order to win with this deck, believe it or not, with the untappers. Cradle, duh. Gemstone, duh. Nykthos, duh. Yavimaya, duh. Cool. We're through the deck list. Now let's get into the round spice. So, long story short, before we get into how my deck plays and I show this to you, round 1, I came in and I told my opponents that, hey, someone bought my ticket. I'm bringing my pet deck. I don't really think this is going to win. I genuinely believed all that. Absolutely. It's my pet deck. I think I'm really good at it. Yisan should not be winning tournaments, and it certainly shouldn't have been number 1 in Swiss at all. And this was my opponent's fault. No one knew the deck. No one asked me questions. No one politicked correctly. And I did one political strategy that won me all of Swiss. This is what won me Swiss. I said, you should not kill Yisan before verse counter 3. We always want the option to slam Manglehorn. And saying this over and over and over again to all of my opponents constantly so they would let me keep Yisan on the board to stop people that I would point at and gaslight and say, they have Dockside, they've got LED, they've got this, all these things. Well, LED doesn't matter. You get my point. But some people didn't know that and would believe me. And you just point at people and you make them seem like the biggest threat. And I'm just, I'm little old Yisan. Play it up, yuck it up, yap it up, Yisan the yapper. So I did that all tournament. And then in game 1, it came to my turn 3 and I got Toxic Deluged. And I reset. And I said, hey, let's get my verse counters up. And a guy dropped the Bowmaster. But there's someone else had Heuristic. And I said, hey, let me know what you want to ping. I'll let you know if I feel like it's taking us off everything. And I started talking to him about Manglehorn again. And he's like, all for it. Because he's on Breach. It doesn't affect him. LED. He knew the other 2 players were on Grixis piles. They're on Blue Farm. And we needed to shut down things when I couldn't cast spells. So that way if someone's silenced, I could still stop them. So he helped me out and didn't ping my stuff. Then when he finally went to go ping it, I tapped, got Goremonger, and gave myself hexproof on Yisan when he tried to ping him. Then another player tried to snap the Goremonger. I said, that's fine. Flashed Goremonger back in on the second ping. Saved my game. Went for the win. And the other person at the table who knew who Yisan was, knew what the deck could do, got very upset. She was very irate that people did not listen to her, that I had underplayed the deck. And I said, yes, I underplayed myself. That's the point. I'm mono green. There's really no other strategy here for me. I am supposed to tell you, I'm little old Yisan. What am I supposed to do? And at the end of the day, people got very upset by that. And at one point, I was starting to be called a liar. People started telling me I am fibbing, lying, cheating. And it was just this insanely awkward situation where people were very upset by my political style. I took every single one of these players that I'm about to reference off to the side and chatted with them and made sure they were okay. The last thing I ever want to be is a player you don't want to play with. And the last thing I ever want to be called is a liar. I think that is extremely rude, upsetting to me, as well as I don't think you should be at a tournament again if you're going to go around and besmirch other players. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. I respect every player that I played with this weekend, and some people I'm going to highlight that were just incredible, and especially when I tell you guys about the top 16 and the insane political conversation that lost me it, that I'm so proud of my opponents for piecing together. It was absolutely incredible. Games 2 and 3, I was wiped from Yisan every game. And eventually, I pieced together Yisan, Quirion Ranger, and Fanatic of Ronus. Then it goes to my turn. I'm little old Yisan. I slam Dozen. I slam Teamer Sabertooth. I have now activated Fanatic of Ronus. I'm allowed to untap a couple times with Teamer and my Quirion to get me enough mana to go get Ashaya on burst counter 5, go infinite with Quirion Ranger and Fanatic of Ronus, I've won the game. That happened both games. They were long fought, very excessive high counterspell, crazy games, and I ended up sneaking in the wins. My fourth game was an ID. My fifth game, and this is the game I feel so bad for Matt Lamora's Cards, who was in my game, also my roommate for the weekend. Someone decided to Chaos Warp his Birds of Paradise instead of my Yisan when I was representing Win on my turn. That no one knew because I just stayed quiet that game because everyone else yapped enough that I didn't have to do anything. I did a lot of pregame talking, but I just kind of stayed chill. It was the most obvious win I've ever had. I just kind of went, cool. This was my third game. Not fourth, sorry, not my fifth, sorry. Went to my Dozen, won the game, went infinite, really easy. My fifth game, I actually lost to the Thrasios, Vial Smasher player that I lost in top 16 to. He had a turn 2, had the nuts, one turn 2, no one had counter spells. It happens. We had counter spells, but no one could stop him. It happens. Game 6, I'm like, cool, we're IDing, right guys? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh crap, I gotta fight. This was the complicated game, and this is the game that most people, I think, got very upset at me. I kept saying I'm not the threat. I kept pointing at the Itali player. I had to burn 3 different Destroy Artifact spells. 2. My Force of Vigor and my Naturalize to stop him from getting a turn 2 Itali. He ended up getting it anyway, then flickered it for turn 3. It was really crazy. He stole a Perplexing Chimera from the Kennen, but I realized going to my turn, if I could just get to it, I'm fine. And I talked the Blue Farm player into playing a Draenith to stop both of them, so that way the Kennen player couldn't copy it and start going off, and the Itali player couldn't play the spells. And as a result of this political conversation, the player to my right, who knew I was going to win, got very upset, and I was gaslighting him. I was making the other 2 people feel like I wasn't going to win when he knew I was. He had interaction, and the player I got to play the Draenith ended up locking him out. And this all happened because I was calm and collected and nice and cheery and being the nice guy at the table. And the other player was very, and I'm not trying to make this person seem like either negative, none of this. He was obviously upset. His voice was very raised. He was very intense. And the other players didn't want to listen to that. And so it got to my turn. I win. And then I went through Perplexing Chimera with the Disciple Defrayles loop that I talked about. And when presenting the loop, he was very irritated with me because I asked him, can I just show the loop? And he said, yeah, I want to see it. To him, he meant he wanted me to play it out. I thought he just wanted me to pull the stuff out of the deck to show him. Because in my head, I'm like, oh, I have Dozen. I win. It's fine. I don't even have to cast a spell anymore. I'm Yisan. And, we almost called a judge. We ended up settling it just fine. There was a pretty intense discussion after the fact. Later on, I saw this player pointing at me from the sidelines, talking about me. I could tell they're upset, and I went to him, and we had a good discussion, and I talked to him about, after a game like that, it's really important to talk to your opponents and say, hey, what could I have said to had you listen to me? What could I have done? And he didn't. He didn't ask them what could they have done differently, so that way he didn't lose that game. But just told him, I told him, you were the correct person. You knew what was going on. I should have been stopped. It's not your fault. And I wanted them to know that, I hope my political game didn't bother you. Last game I did, I ended up 22 points, first of Swiss. Now going on to the finals pod of top 6 or semifinals for top 16. I locked the game out on the first time after getting a double opposition agent, and there was just nothing I could do. So I locked them out with a double verse counter, quickly go get oof on top of the opposition agent coming down. We ended up IDing, restarting that game. The next game, I dozened on another person's turn and let 2 people have the turn before mine, knowing I'd win on my turn because I knew they had interaction to kill Yisan before my turn, betting they couldn't win because I had a Chalice on 0 and none of them had played their rocks. The turn before mine, they all handed each other each other's hands, and realized if they Boseju'd each other, got each other lands, it would give them the mana to cast Oppo and stop me. I was 1 verse counter away from winning. It was really sad. And then for the rest of the game, I was grinding through my deck to get an answer, and I realized I had taken out Kogla for Disciple of Freyles. and that lost me my top 16. If I would have had that fight on a creature, I definitely could have won. I even drew the Disciple, showing that inclusion is what lost it to me. So, end of the day, I really needed Kogla. That's kind of where the death happened. And now that you know all this information, and I hope this information dump wasn't annoying, let's move on to Spell Table here. And I will show you what makes my Yisan list different from everyone else's. So going into this tournament, when I hit 3-0, I believe, a player came up to me and said, I was going to make fun of your Yisan list, but I guess I can't now. I think that person was extremely rude and out of pocket. I never played a single game with them, and I don't know why they targeted me that way, and it upset me a lot. And so I'm hoping not to see them in future tournaments, especially in top pods. I think that was extremely rude, and I'm not interested in ever being around people like that. I think there's no reason to say something like that to someone. But all that being said, here's my list, and why I think it's really special to me, and why I think you should play it too. So let's get a fresh hand, showing I'm not curating. So no lander, easy flump. Awesome hand, other than the one land, which makes it dicey, but we can play 2 awesome cards. So we draw for turn, land, Chrome Mox, Naturalize under it because it's the most niche interaction, Bird, Allosaurus, should have done the other way around. Exploration's interesting, considering we're about to go get our Quirion. That's turn 2 for us. We're feeling amazing. Destiny Spinner for even more. So this is where my political game comes in and why I consider myself one of the best players of that tournament. Main phase, go get Quirion. In terms of politics, sorry, not best in terms of like my deck, just politics. Go get Quirion. I haven't played a land drop this turn. Return it. Play it again. I'm now representing only 2 mana. But if we go to the next turn, what's really fun about this deck is between what I have right here now with the additional land drops and how Quirion Ranger works, we can set up for next turn super well, kind of calm the table down. So before leaving, we grab the Dusty Spinner or the Canker Bloom, whatever we feel like is going to help us. We're going to do the Destiny Spinner, actually the Canker Bloom for options. Go to turn 4. This is win right here at any point. So you go into your end step of the player 4 to you, and you go grab Priest of Titania. And then on upkeep, it's an easy go grab Dozin. Oops. Accidentally drawing cards. You go grab Dozin. You slam it. And you win. And normally people are going to let you do that because they don't know your deck does. But let's head into something more complicated now that I want to show off. So this isn't a normal turn 1, but we're going to show you what the turn 1 Yisan type plays look like. And this is what won me Swiss, in my opinion. So let's say I'm a player 2, for example, in this case. This is a meh hand, funny enough. It looks really good, but we'll play it out. So we'll go into our turn. Let's say we gave away the Kenrith's Transformation and to exile. Play this, exile. Easy. Actually, we don't exile. We play the Lotus Petal out. Next turn, it's land, exile, Spirit Guide for the Quirion, activate, go get. At this point, we want more mana, funny enough, not another untapper or anything like that, or even protection. We just want more mana. Because we want to have a 6 mana turn next turn. That's really important. So all in all, we're going to go grab I believe it's just going to be a bird. But normally it's another elf. So we'll grab Findhorn Elves here. Go next turn. Chrome. Put it under. Land. And this is what I did all tournament that won me. So we have 1 verse counter on Yisan right now. We'll represent that with a quick counter, add a counter. So we have 1 verse counter on him right now. You're playing out this chill, hey, let's leave options open. End step of first turn into you. Your player 2. You go, okay, yeah, I'll I'll tap Yisan. Cool. I'm just going to go get Priest of Titania. And they're like, okay, cool. I'll go get a Mana Dork. Cool. They're chilling. You're like, yeah, I can. I might as well. I'll activate Yisan again. You play it off. You're chill. You're relaxed. You've activated Korean. They're like, okay, cool. Dozen. Dozen comes out in their end step. You only do this if they're tapped out and no one has a response. You go into your turn, and this is win. Right here. You won the game. You verse counter 4. You go get your Team or Sabretooth. Bonk. With that 3 mana, you put it land back in your hand. Untapping. Tapping. Verse counter 5. Ashaya. Bonk. Tap for 3 mana. Tap Korean Ranger for a 4th mana due to Ashaya. And tap a 5th mana for Dozen. Use 2 of it. Put her back in your hand. Put her out. You got 2 mana left. Put her back in your hand. And unlimitedly tap and untap your Priest of Titania with Korean. Now you have unlimited untaps with your unlimited mana for Yisan. You go get Woodland Bellower. Woodland Bellower searches your library and instantly puts in the guy from Innistrad, Dustwatch Recruiter. Bonk. I just realized not all of this was on the screen. Sorry. Dustwatch Recruiter allows you to infinitely go through your deck, find all your creatures. You filter until you find... Please don't be the last card in the library. There it is. Infinite Walking Ballista. Yay. Slam. You win the game. So that's the deck. That's how this works. I hope you liked hearing all the rambles I had to say. I know this is a super unstructured, no edited video. I thought you guys would enjoy it. Thanks for watching.